Hello and welcome to Car Space. So this is kind of well, I don't have a script for this one. It's not. I mean, it's not going to be upsetting for you more than likely for all 10 of you or so that listen. But I've decided to kind of put the show on an indefinite pause, uh, and the reason for that is that my wife and I and my family are looking to make a lot of changes in our life here in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, and it requires a lot of my focus. And I don't think it'd be fair to the show to give it kind of a half-assed approach. The show deserves all the attention, and I feel like it's already started. I have a lot going on, and it's already starting to wear on the show to the point that sometimes it's like Saturday before, and I'm rushing to uh, research, record, edit, and post the episode. So that's kind of a good part of the reason. Looking to go back to school potentially, and then like there's just a lot of big changes going on in our family. So that's kind of the reason for it. I'm not shutting the show down permanently. If a day and time come where the right situation comes about that restarting the show makes sense, then of course I'll do that. I still love cars. I still love talking to people who love cars. I'm still open to doing interviews on other shows or being a part of some other show that maybe requires less of my time than doing the show, recording, researching, editing, and posting, and everything that comes along with doing a show by yourself entails. Uh, so with that, I kind of want to just kind of look back at the show real quick and some of the things I've learned. I've learned about a lot of awesome cars, and I've learned about whole new segments of cars, like the K car. That's still something that kind of looking back, that is weird that I find myself so interested in, and still am, and would still love to find one. Um, and then all the people I've gotten to talk to on this show and outside of the show, and this show has really forced me to look into different parts of car culture that maybe I wouldn't have looked at before. Um, as you know, before I was pretty much into American muscle type stuff and trucks and stuff like that, and now I can sit here and tell you that probably one of my dream cars is a Mitsubishi Starion or Chrysler Conquest Eagle, whatever the Eagle came out to be called. Um, so I've gained quite the appreciation for Japanese cars, and not that I still obviously my favorite car is still a Chevelle and a Trans Am, but the Starion is up there. And I sit there and I look through classifieds, and I don't just skip over the Japanese cars anymore, right? Like I used to just kind of okay, moving on. I stop and look at them and think, well, that would be a pretty cool project. The most surprising episode I can remember doing on the show that I thought I would not like doing, but I ended up really enjoying and really liking the story was the Toyota Prius, which I'm assuming the listeners agreed because that's the most listened to episode that I've done as far as a podcast goes. The most popular episode I've done as a YouTube was actually the Isuzu Via Cross. I'm not going to get into the numbers of it because I don't have it up to date here in front of me, but um, the Via Cross was always one of those things that I remember seeing a few of, and it was kind of like ooh, I really like that. The Isuzu Axiom actually which came after the Via Cross was one of them too, but the Prius episode was one that my dad had me do, or he asked me to do, and I was really surprised how fascinating the story was, and kind of how that all came to be was really cool. Um, so I just wanted to real quick kind of go and thank certain people for helping on this episode, or on this not on this episode, sorry, this podcast. Um, First of all, Landon, who was my first person that I interviewed with his Lotus. Thank you. He came on for 2 episodes. I really appreciate that. It's an awesome car. I really like talking to him. It was really easy to talk to. Um, there was the listener Chris. Thank you, Chris, for coming on and kind of fighting through your shyness to do that. That was a lot of fun, and I wish we could have done another one, and maybe one day we will. I want to thank Edward from SaveTheK.com. He after I did the episode on the K car, he came on and talked to me about his K car and how he imported it and everything like that. So that was really cool. Michael from the Drunken UX podcast, thank you for coming on and talking to me about your cool cars and the 2 or 3 recordings, whatever we tried to do to get that one episode done. I want to thank Fletch from All Things Overlanding. I still follow his stuff. I'm part of his newbie overlanding group. I haven't yet started overlanding, but it's definitely always something in the back of my mind and kind of forefront of my mind, thinking that's something I'd love to do one day. Mickey from the Thing About Cars podcast. Anyone that's listening to this, if you're like, man, Car Space was my jam, that's the only podcast I listen to about cars. I know that's not the case. But definitely go over and check out The Thing About Cars. It's a great podcast. I still listen to it. I want to thank my dad for coming on. That was a really special episode to me, probably the most special episode. Just getting to talk to my dad for as long as I did. Obviously, he lives in Florida, I live up in Canada, so we're a good bit apart, and we don't get to talk as much as we'd like, I'm sure. And getting to learn about his growing up, and about my grandpa. I didn't really know a lot about my grandpa, and it really since then has taken me down kind of a rabbit hole of trying to find out more about my family and my background, and about my grandpa, particularly in racing. I've been trying to find more information on that. And of course, I want to thank Matt, who was on for several episodes. He has his own podcast, the ComaCast. Matt and I always wanted to do more episodes together on here, and I always envisioned one day he'd get to be like the permanent co-host. But he's obviously busy with nursing school, plus his podcast that he does with his co-host Cody on the Coma podcast. It's a great podcast on LGBT issues, and there's also the occasional, I want to say murder mystery to it, but that's not exactly what it is. But no, I want to thank Matt a lot. He is probably the reason that this episode, or not this episode, sorry, that this podcast ran as long as it did, because there was a lot of times where I was getting run down and I didn't see the point. I didn't think the listenership was ever going to grow, and he kept me pushing forward for the love of talking about cars. And I still love talking about cars. Like I said, I don't want to put half an effort into doing this podcast, this YouTube, whatever. I am still going to be around. Oh, also, I want to thank all of the listeners, everyone who's ever listened to an episode, the 10 or so of you that listened to every episode. Thank you very much for that. I really appreciate it, more than you know. And again, I'm not shutting down this podcast forever. The feed will still be there. Maybe once in a while I'll release an episode, but as far as regularly doing it, right now, like I said, it's on an indefinite pause until I get through everything that we're going through and all the changes we're trying to make in our lives, in my family. I want to thank my wife for putting up with this crazy hobby of mine as well. I'm sure there's a lot of times that she could think of better things for us to do than me to come down to the basement to do some recordings, or to do it when I was doing it in our bedroom. For putting up with me putting together this little space here. So yeah, that's kind of how I'm going to wrap this up. Like I said, I'm still available to do, if anybody's listening to this, has another podcast and comes across it, I'm still available. I still love talking about cars. I'm happy to come on and talk about cars. I can't regularly do this. I'm also working, my daughter has a gaming channel, so I do edit that for her. It obviously not as serious. She loves doing it, and I enjoy putting them out for her. I just don't get to spend the time to do it as much, so now I have a little bit more time to do that. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Again, thank you to everyone who's helped out with this podcast, all the listeners who've listened. Thank you to my wife who's put up with it for as long as she has. I know she was surprised when I said that I got to stop doing this for now. And with that, one last time, well, for now, have a great week, have a great year, however long it takes, and drive safe. Thank you.